to order the virtual meeting of the East Maine School District 63 Board of Education meeting. Roll call, please.
Ms. Wachowski?
Here.
Ms. Sack?
Here.
Ms. Anderson?
Here.
Mr. Bluskin?
Here.
Mr. Urban?
Here.
Mr. Simmons?
Here.
And Ms. Brooke?
Here. Okay, so those that had wanted to make a public comment at our meeting were asked to do so using a link. The board has received a few emails directly sent to us, and then there was also one public comment. So the ones that were received via email, I'm going to summarize. So the board received an email from Ms. Cortez expressing her concern about the phased-in approach. And what I mean by phased in, the phasing in of the grades. So that phased-in approach of our hybrid and return to school plan. Ms. Kate Pauley had also sent in an email to us, really advocating for the youngest of our learners, the K through 2 students, to come back to school as quickly as possible. And then we also received an email from, Sarah Murphy, definitely advocating hybrid, but would definitely prefer full days of instruction as opposed to our hybrid proposal that we will be discussing this evening. We also, as I said, did receive through our public comment link a comment from Mr. Phil Hoden. And the comment is as follows. In the event that the hybrid model is approved and in-person learning resumes, what will the in-class experience look like? Specifically for individual classes, will those students that are in person and those that are remote still be taught by the same teacher? Will the in-person and remote students have different teachers? If they still have the same teacher, does that mean that the students that are in person will be sitting in the classroom but still doing all of their learning electronically via their Chromebooks with their teacher not actually providing face-to-face instruction? If they have different teachers, does that mean any camaraderie and familiarity with their teacher and classmates goes out of the window and they have new ones? If the in-person learning is still simply virtual learning, but you just happen to be sitting in the same room, what is the point? Okay. Deb, did we receive any other public comments at this point in time?
No, that's all we have for now.
Okay. Thank you. And thank you to everyone who chose to comment. I do want to bring something up, though, really as a reminder to the public and to the community. We, as the board, are here to serve you. You have elected us, and we absolutely want to hear from you. But I do want to remind you that we function as a board, not as individuals. Therefore, if you would like to make a comment, please do so by sending that to the entire board and not board members individually. Board members individually cannot act on their own. So I just wanted to remind members of the community, we are here to listen to you and we want to hear from you, but please be mindful that we function as a group, as a whole, and not as individuals. So thank you. Okay, so moving right along, could I please have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor? Or a roll call, please. I'm sorry.
Ms. Sack?
Yes.
Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Bluskin?
Yes.
Ms. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Simmons?
Yes.
Ms. Brooke?
Yes.
Ms. Wachowski?
Yes.
And that motion passes. Okay, so Reports really don't have a lot other than obviously just trying to get through day to day and go through to make sure that that we're doing what we should be doing. And the only thing that I did participate in yesterday, I was part of the committee in dealing with impact bargaining with our teacher union. And that's all I have. Board members, anybody else?
I attended a virtual IASB presentation entitled What Every School Board Should Know About English Language Learners. And the presenters were from the Latino Policy Forum. It was a very interesting presentation. They talked about tracking the academic performance of your English language learners to determine how effective your program is. So basically, as an elementary school, it would be checking in with the high school to see how our kids are doing, probably more so. Are they being ID'd as gifted? Are they enrolled in high school AP and advanced classes? And the University of Chicago did a study with CPS students, and they found that the English language learners, the former English language learners, actually scored higher than the non-English language learners. They also talked about the state seal of biliteracy, and I don't know, maybe some of you are familiar with that. I was not. It is something that students can take to prove that they're college ready in their English skills and in whatever other language. And it's available for native English speakers and former ELL students. And they can take it and they can get college credit. The bulk of the presentation had to do with COVID and the effect on your English language learners. And the Latino Policy Forum has created a handbook with IASB giving guidance to districts on the kind of things that they could do to help their ELL learners. And if anyone is interested, I can pass along the link through Debbie if you want to go and check it out. And then I just wanted to remind everyone, because division meetings are going to be virtual, you can go to the IASB website and check out the topic for other division meetings and sign up. And that's all I have.
I do have just a quick comment. The delegate assembly, which usually happens during our fall or November Illinois Association of School Boards Convention, is still coming up. They had a webinar last Monday, which I missed because it was scheduled for 5 o'clock and I was on my way home from work. They did tape the webinar. However, they, for some reason, had a technical glitch in the first 15 minutes of the webinar is missing. So I'm getting more information. I will share with the board as soon as I get more information on exactly what's going on. However, everything we're voting on is posted. I just reviewed a little bit. I'm curious to see some issues are back on the agenda, etc. So I will let everybody know by the next meeting. We still have time to decide if you want me to vote one way or another based on board consent.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other board members? Okay. Dr. Clay, I will turn that over to you then.
All right, thank you. I have a short report tonight. As you know, tonight we'll be presenting our proposed plan for moving to the hybrid model, and we are all looking forward to having more children back in our schools. And then just one other thing I'd like to put on the board's radar, because of the complexities of the pandemic and our need to manage crowd size as much as possible, even though we will go back to live board meetings next month, I am recommending that we forego our practice of holding board meetings in our schools until we're able to do so safely. Right now, the schools will be spending their evenings sanitizing their buildings, and plus we also tend to have crowds at the schools. So give that some thought, please, board. And but that's my recommendation, that we don't do that for now. And that's all I have next.
Okay. All right. Up next is our operations report.
Yes,
Barry.
thank you. There was a water pipe break at Melzer this week. On Tuesday morning, we discovered that there was an inch of water on the one wing of Melzer. It affected 6 classrooms. There was very minimal damage. Our insurance carrier came in, sent a crew to dry out the rooms, and the only real damage to the building was the carpet base came off the wall, which is going to be replaced tomorrow. Life safety inspections, our annual life safety inspections for the ROE are scheduled for next Monday and Tuesday. I'll be taking the inspector to all our buildings. And our occupancy inspection for the Early Learning Center will be on Thursday at 1 o'clock. And I'm conducting walkthroughs with all the principals right now over the next week or so to determine what's needed to prepare us for in-person instruction. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Leppert to give us an update on the Early Learning Center.
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello? You can hear me? Okay.
Yes.
So thank you, everybody, for having me here this evening. I just wanted to provide a brief update on what's going on with the Early Learning Center project and Gemini track and field project. So I am happy to report that we are just a couple weeks away from being ready to have students at the Early Learning Center. As Dan had mentioned, we have final inspections next week. We have some fire alarm tests, ROE inspection. There's some other tests that are taking place. There are some last minute construction activities taking place in the building, which includes finishing up some flooring and some corridors. If you drive by the site, you'll see they're still working on the siding, which will probably take the better part of the next couple of weeks. I've worked with staff, and we are preparing to move furniture in starting on Tuesday of next week, and the teachers will be in to start setting up classrooms as early as next Friday, and that will continue with office staff as necessary through the course of the following week. And as soon as the first round of furniture goes in the first ends of like building area A of the building will be set up first. And once that's done, we'll final clean. So in the update that I provided in your board packet, you'll see there's a lot of dust and dirt and protection, but that will all kind of get cleaned as the furniture gets put into place. Okay. Does anybody have any questions about the Early Learning Center that I could answer specifically before I talk about Gemini?
Yes, I've driven by there a couple of times, and at the south end of the building where they're putting in the playground equipment and you got the water retention pond there, is there going to be some sort of fencing placed in there?
Yes. There is going to be fencing placed around both of those playgrounds. It gets a barrier fence there, and then there's a screening, like a privacy fence, that will go up along the west elevation between the school property and the neighbors to the west. But those playgrounds will, in fact, be enclosed. Thank you. No problem. Anybody else? No. So I just wanted to let you know that the track project, we've got the track surface, all the curbs are done, and the stone has been placed for the asphalt paving. But I wanted to give the board a heads up that, and actually things have changed even since I wrote the report yesterday. We have since notified the installing contractor regarding the retaining wall on the northwest corner of the track, that due to the poor concrete compression strength samples that we've received, there are some concerns about the long-term integrity of that wall, and our ELAs and the structural engineer's recommendation is in fact to remove that wall. I just wanted you all to know that us taking samples is a standard procedure. It's very rare that we get a mixed design. So every concrete pour that's done on a project, we take samples, they break them at regular intervals. And so we've been watching this since it was poured back in, I think, early September. And so this is a very rare occurrence to get a batch of concrete that's not performing. But our belief is that the risk long term would not be worth it. And so it definitely, our recommendation is to replace it. And that certainly will have an impact on the schedule. We were hoping to actually be paving this week. It's likely going to take about 3 to 4 weeks to remove that, demo it, recast it, and then backfill it and prepare the track again. So I just wanted to give everybody heads up to that fact. Okay. Does anybody have any questions about the Gemini track project? No?
No?
Okay. All right. That's all I've got tonight. Like I said, we're happy to be done. We're in that home stretch. It's exciting. And I'm sure once you guys have a chance to get in the building, you'll be proud of what's been accomplished. It's actually a very beautiful building.
It definitely seems that way. Thank you.
Thanks,
No
Jim.
problem. Thank you very much. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, Mr. Barry, you're all done?
Yes, that concludes my report.
Great, thank you. Okay, and then finally, we are here to really discuss the main topic in the 4 is the hybrid model metrics discussion. And Dr. Clay or Mr. Roberson, I don't know who is going to take over.
I'll be kicking us off. So Aaron, you can go ahead and start
Great.
the presentation.
Thank you.
Board members, we will be giving lots of detail tonight for each of you, and especially since many of our families and staff members are watching to find out the details here too of what we're proposing. Feel free to ask any questions as we go through this. There's a lot of information. It might be best if we hold off on discussing changes and other recommendations that you might have until we get to the end so that everybody has all the information before we start talking about what we can do, what we can do differently, and that kind of thing. So next slide, please. So these are our priorities for this project, and 3 very equal priorities. One is to get kids back to in-person learning for those families who have chosen to do so. Maintaining the safety of all students, staff, and families, which we've been doing all along, and we'll continue to do that to the best of our ability. And also to provide quality instruction, whether in-person or remote learning option is chosen. And you'll see as we go through this that we would work really hard to maintain the integrity of the remote learning option, which has been pretty popular compared to what we did previously in the spring. Janet?
Thank you, Dr. Clay. As I think most of you know, and our families certainly do, last month we disseminated 2 surveys, one to our instructional staff and one to D63 families. Although these surveys were primarily focused on the 63 online experience over the past month, we did ask parents about their preferences for sending students back for in-person learning. Our response, while not as high as in our July surveys, was quite robust. In general, we can have some confidence that the respondents do represent the views of the entire population, but it is always important to remember that all surveys only reflect the respondents' views and never the entire target audience. So you can see there are response rates. Next slide. A quick look at our staff results first. We had very good representation from all of our schools, and more than 3/4 of the respondents were teachers. As you can see, most respondents gave their own remote learning experiences high marks for everything from actual teaching experience to the support they've been receiving, our safety protocols, and the decision to begin the year remotely. One survey question asked respondents to rate whether they felt their students were more or less engaged than they were last spring, or about the same. You can see more than 85% of the respondents did feel that their students were more engaged this fall than they were last spring. Moving on to the parent guardian survey. Once again, we had very good representation across all of our schools and all of our grades. And we asked a number of questions about our family's experience with D63 online this fall. Here's one of our key findings. As you see, it's pretty clear that most respondents do feel that our fall program was an improvement over last spring. In fact, if we sort of take out the 12% of the respondents who couldn't answer this question because they were new to the district, that number jumps, quite a bit. It jumps up to over 75%. So that was very nice. Next. All right. This question that you're looking at here was not comparative. All parents could answer it. It just asked for a general satisfaction rating with our 63 online program. And as you can see, just shy of 70% were either satisfied or very satisfied with the program. All right, so as noted, we did include a forced choice question about whether or not parents would be willing to send their children back for in-person learning. Respondents could only respond yes or no. They couldn't skip the question. And the results, I will say, did surprise us a little bit. One of our respondent families was sure that 98% of the families wanted to return to in-person learning. In fact, as you see, just under half of the survey respondents felt that way. We did include a link within the survey that provided more information about the proposed hybrid program so the families could make a more informed choice. And one thing that's really important to remember about these numbers is that they represent respondents, that is families. They don't represent students. So one yes response here could potentially represent multiple students, as could one no response. But it was fairly much more even than we thought it would be. Next. So our last question, we asked for general feedback about remote learning and returning to in-person school. You can see here there were a range of responses and a lot of comments. There are a lot of opinions and hopes and concerns and wishes on this topic. It's just not easy for anyone. And you can see from the pie chart that the pro and con open the schools comments were just about even. We also had a fairly big group that I labeled the sort of it depends group. If we had offered that option in the previous question, they probably would have chosen it. They really felt the decision would need to be based on the district's programs, their own confidence levels, that the children would be safe. So what did some of these 417 comments look like? All right, here's a very few. Just so you know, anyone who's interested in reading all of the comments, the full survey results with every comment and every chart is available as a link through the board agenda tonight. You can look at all of those. So, but I have included a few samples here. I tried to be representative of the kinds of things that many parents said. The orange comments came from our Open the Schools group, whereas the purple comments represent the parents who did not wish the schools to reopen and did not want to send their children back. And finally, the green group is a sampling of our it depends comments. As you see, different families simply feel differently. From believing sending children back is worth the chance, worth the risk, to feeling that it would not be worth it to send a child back. You can see some striking contrast there in the purple and the orange. The comments in the green were the kinds of comments many parents made having to do with the number of students in a room. They wanted a guarantee of safety, and they had concerns about our ability to enforce our, health and safety protocols. And that kind of wraps up the survey portion of our program. Does anyone have any questions about the survey?
I do, Janet. Did you get comments? Were the comments equally split between the three categories as well? Your 400 comments, or were they more in one category than another?
Can you go back one slide? You can look at the pie chart there and take a look. The reopened schools group was 27.34% of the comments.
Okay.
Keep schools closed was, so you can see that really other was almost our largest category. And that doesn't surprise me. I mean, most people are they feel they're not sure one way or the other. They don't feel definitive one way or the other. So
Thank you. I needed to see the chart again after seeing the comments.
Are we surprised by the change in the number of families that are deciding not to send their students back to school? If I recall, back in the early fall, the number was more like 25%, and now it seems to have doubled.
yes, we all were a little surprised by this. It's difficult to speculate why the change. Certainly, the comments reflected just grave concerns with winter coming, flu season coming, the feeling that cases would spike. I think maybe we did provide more information. In our earlier survey, we just said, do you want to send your kids back? And many parents said, well, it's difficult to know. We need to know more information. And so this time we provided more information. That might have made a difference. But you're right, that piece of our parent population certainly grew.
And I guess the other thing, and you had mentioned this earlier, that because you're forcing a yes or no answer, that maybe you're at 28.78% of keeping the schools closed, which is nearly 30%, but then you could factor in the unsure depends percentage and the other, and you're actually over 50%. So I don't know how that factors into this.
Yeah, so I didn't talk much about other, and that's because many of those comments were really just more relating to our 63 online.
Okay, gotcha.
Because it's very general. The question was, do you have anything more to say about 63 online or about coming back to school? So not all, but a good chunk of them.
Yeah. Question for you as well. Do we know, I've been hearing, but I don't know for sure, that neighboring districts and districts that have chosen to be open had something like 60 to 80% of kids coming back to the school. Do we know what the numbers are for districts around us that are opening soon or have opened already?
I know more anecdotal evidence, and probably Dr. Clay could speak more to this, but certainly you're right. The anecdotal evidence I've heard from other districts tend to be a lot more lopsided, with a higher number of families who would like to come back. Dr. Clay, do you have anything more to add to that? Or
what I've heard from superintendents and also from our legal counsel who works with lots of school districts said that typically it's around 25 to 30% of parents who keep their kids out.
Okay. So that's consistent with what I've been hearing. So that seems about right. Okay. That our range seems a little higher, but I also don't know if once we actually say, here's our plan, that number might go up a little bit. Who knows?
Correct.
Who knows? Yeah.
And don't forget, half the families didn't respond. So
that, sometimes if you're okay with it either way, you're just not going to respond. We can hypothesize all we want about that.
We can use some statistics. It has a 90% confidence level with a plus or minus margin of error of 2%. So in fact, it's pretty good as a good representative sample. But it is also the truth that it's half our family. So.
Yeah, we just don't know what we don't know. But we know at least 50% of people would probably say, yes, I'm sending my child back. Could be 60, 70%. We just don't know till we really say, by this date, you must
really roll it out, right?
Yep. Okay, thank you.
All right, Sean?
Yes. So we do have a COVID dashboard where we report any positive COVID cases in the district and any individuals who are quarantining. You have to quarantine if you're a close contact to someone who is COVID positive or someone who's a probable case. So if there's an interest, anyone can go onto the website and look at this COVID dashboard that is broken down by school and see both new cases, but also cumulative cases and exposures. We've been tracking since obviously we opened, and we're reporting data since August 17th. So in approximately 7 weeks, we've had 3 positive cases in the district, and 14 individuals have had to quarantine. And I think it is important to note this includes any staff and any students, and that we do count any case, no matter how it's determined that it's contracted. So if we have someone in their private life, who is COVID positive, and we know that was the cause, they have to have time off work to isolate. We're still counting them in our numbers. Next slide, Aaron.
All right, so here is the proposal for the new metrics. And I tried to build in some flexibility on this so that we could avoid being closed unnecessarily or slowing us down in the return. And also in the reverse, if things go the other direction, we want to be able to act quickly if we need to close schools down. So we're using two stats in this proposal, the positivity rate and the new cases per 100,000. Both are indicators of which direction the virus seems to be going, whether it's increasing or decreasing. And from in the time that I've been watching these two stats, they kind of follow these categories, like 0 to 5% positivity rate seems to result mostly in new cases that are less than 100,000. So right now, all of our communities are in that range of 0 to, nobody's down at 0, but they're all from 1 point something to just under 5%. And they all have somewhere between 40 to 60 new cases or 70 new cases. The middle level there, the 5.01 to 7.9 positivity rate and the 101 to 174 cases per 100,000 is where we have some flexibility. That's where we would start talking about what the trend is starting to look like, where we might be heading, and do we need to slow down? Let's say that we bring our kindergartners back and suddenly we're getting really close to 8% positivity rate in our communities. We need to start talking in advance so that we're not just surprised when it maybe shoots beyond that and hopefully goes the other way. And then if it's 8% positivity rates and or 175 plus new cases per 100,000, then we would return fully to remote learning. That's basically the statistics for the state returning to phase 3. Any questions on that slide? Okay, next slide, Aaron. And then, of course, this kind of goes without saying as far as when we return to full remote learning, it's at 8% positivity and 175 cases per 100,000. And also I put in here that if one community out of our 5 has a spike, then we need to talk as a board and administration. What do? Do we need to do something at the schools that are in that community? Or do we need to do something district-wide? Of course, Gemini is affected by every community, so that would be a tough conversation if something like that happens. Right. And then here's the proposed transition plan. As you know, board, we had said that once the decision was made that we were coming back, we would need 3 weeks to prepare many things, which you'll see throughout this presentation. So here's what we're planning to do, or what we're proposing to do. On October 19th, we would bring in all of our pre-K through 8th grade self-contained classrooms. And that's a little confusing because those kids are already in school. We started them right after Labor Day. But currently they are on an A-B schedule, so they're all only going to school 2 days a week. So we would move them into a 5-day-a-week model first and get them settled in that routine. And then a week later, bring in all of our kindergartners. And then you can see on the chart how we move through there. One question that may come up as you look at this is why is pre-K, the rest of the pre-K kids, all down there at November 9th? This is because we would like to be able to, as we phase in the grade levels into the hybrid plan, we'd like to be able to phase out our program at expanded learning. And many of the people working expanded learning during the day are pre-K teacher assistants. So if we were to bring pre-K back right away, we would have to close down that program, leaving the parents of those older kids kind of stranded for a few weeks until their kids end up going back to school without a program that we can provide for them. So that's why we moved pre-K down there. Also, the other reason is that we want to make sure that the new Early Learning Center is completely ready. Gemini is coming back last for a couple reasons. One, it's much more complicated to make sure that their schedules are set and we have all the protocols for a building of that size. And also the older kids are more likely to be doing social things outside of school together, that we want to make sure that we've got that really right before we bring those guys in. Questions on that? Okay. I believe this is Sean.
So the staffing process, is going to be involved because we'll be required to have remote teachers or online teachers and in-person teachers. And we can't staff until we know the number of children who will be coming to school versus doing remote learning. Once we have those numbers, which will occur mid-next week, we will be able to determine staff assignments. And obviously, the number of children in each setting is going to be the primary factor that will drive staffing decisions. There are some other factors, but that is the primary factor. One thing to know is that class lists and student assignments will change. However, we are going to make efforts to keep teacher and student assignments as they stand now as consistent as possible. We know that kids who are going remote, for example, may have a remote teacher and kids in their class from other schools at the elementary level. But as I said, we are going to make, efforts to keep things as consistent as possible. But we do know that some children are going to change teachers.
Sean?
Yes.
Question. So if I have, let's say, a third grader, and my third grader starts in-person learning, hybrid model.
Yep.
And let's assume my child is sick one day and I have to keep him from home. Will that child still join his regular class via remote learning, or will we have to switch teachers for that day?
We won't be switching for one day, but it would be like anything else. The child's sick, they would stay home as if, we were in a normal situation. However, parents will have the option. We know if they start in hybrid, some could later select to switch to hybrid, which could, of course, cause some staffing challenges.
And the other question I have is, if we really feel it's 50 or 60% of kids are going to come back, why wouldn't we double up our teachers into the same classroom, per se, so one can work with the remote students a little bit more, the other one with the students in class, but then you have that ability to keep those students together and not actually need more staff if it's 50.
Well, we would need our numbers to sort of work out perfectly to do that. And we would need probably an even split of teachers. So some grade level sections will have 3 teachers and 75 children. Well, if only 15 of them elect to go remote, we'll have 60 kids with 2 teachers, and we would, or perhaps let's say only 13 go remote. We have 62 kids with 2 teachers in person. We couldn't do that because we could not maintain any sort of social distance between kids. So I'll talk later about the challenges in terms of social distancing in classrooms and sort of what the numbers look like in your standard elementary sized classroom and the classrooms at Gemini. But we've got a number of factors influencing our ability to keep kids social distanced, to staff, and to keep class sizes balanced.
And one more question. Do we have the ability? I understand some school districts are using teacher assistants to help the teacher keep control of remote and in-person learning. Is that an option that we would have if we chose to go that route?
Well, the proposal tonight is to have online and in-person teachers. Aaron will address that, I believe, later. But in the districts, who are having teacher assistants in classrooms, my understanding is that the teacher is working remotely and they are casting the teacher into the classroom, and they're having a teacher assistant in the room supervising the kids. And that's not the proposal we're making. And we would not be able to staff that scenario easily or at all.
Okay. All right. I just want to understand our option. Thank you.
And then I just wanted to emphasize the point for everybody that's watching that even though the numbers look like a lot of kids are going to be staying home, we don't know how those kids fall. There may be schools where almost 90% of the kids want to come back, and schools where very few of the kids are going to come back. The different communities think differently on this, so we have no idea how it's going to shake out when we get the actual names of kids who are coming and who are not.
Excellent point. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Next slide.
All right, so I am going to talk a little bit about how our proposal this evening for the 63 hybrid schedule would closely parallel what we're currently doing with 63 online. And this was purposeful as we did some strategic planning this summer, knowing that this could possibly happen. So the daily schedules will change minimally for students, families, and staff. The bulk of 63 hybrid has students learning in person in the morning, but students will still have some remote learning to complete in the afternoons. As you will notice on the screen, sections colored in yellow are designated as in-person instruction, and sections colored in red are when at-home learning takes place. So students in grades K through 8 are largely the same, but our pre-K schedule will change just a bit. And we'll take a closer look at that now. So obviously our pre-K students only attend either during the morning or afternoon session each day. The 63 online schedule that our pre-K students are learning in right now will be a bit different for hybrid. This is due in large part because we need time to adequately clean and sanitize those classrooms between classes. So as you will see in the daily schedule, there will be just shy of a 2-hour break between each morning and afternoon class. To offset this time for cleaning, pre-K students will have a few at-home activities each week to complete at home, largely in the form of a developmentally appropriate choice board. Again, the activities that students will participate in will closely parallel what they've been currently doing with 63 online. Moving on to our elementary students. Again, the learning schedules for staff and students should be minimally impacted. It's really the location of learning that will change. The times will stay the same. So the caveat to this, as Dr. Schleiser mentioned, is that the order of instructional blocks for students might be in a different order if a student ends up with a new teacher due to staffing shifts. As you can see on this slide, our kindergarten through 5th grade students will get core instruction. So English language arts, which is reading and writing, math, and time building relationships with their classroom communities, along with built-in breaks, all in the morning. And they will continue to have their special classes, so art, music, PE, and library, along with science, social studies, and some social emotional learning work at home in the afternoons. Again, this is what they've been currently doing with 63 online, with the bulk of their learning time in the morning in person. As we talk about Gemini, you'll notice that it is split into 2 groups here. So 6th grade in one group and 7th and 8th grade into another group. And those 2 groups are on a staggered schedule, being offset by about 30 minutes for those 2 groups. This was put into place to decrease the number of students arriving and dismissing at the same time due to the large size of the student population at Gemini. The schedule has been built at Gemini to have students stay in their cohort groups to the greatest extent possible within classrooms and have teachers rotate to each classroom to teach the different core instruction blocks. As I stated for our kindergarten through 5th grade students, the learning schedule for staff and students should be minimally impacted. It's the location of learning that's really changing here. The times will stay the same. Again, a few staffing changes could change some schedules for students and teachers. As you can see in the slide, students will get core instruction, so English language arts, which is their reading and writing, math, social studies, science, and also their advisory period in the morning. And they will continue to have PE and one elective class and the afternoons at home. Sean?
So as I mentioned earlier, I would be discussing the social distancing. The average size classroom in the district is about 750 square feet, which is approximately is 22 by 34. And if we assume that there's a 4x2 teacher desk and 6 feet between students, we can fit about 15 kids in a room. This number assumes that we don't have any other space taken up by furniture, univents, anything like that. So we're looking at about 15 kids a classroom to maintain 6 feet of social distance between kids, knowing that we won't always be able to maintain at least 6 feet. And you'll see some graphics in just a minute showing the different scenarios. To go back to the number of parents who will choose remote versus in-person instruction, I've modeled this, and if we have 50% of our families selecting in-person instruction, at the elementary level, all 97 of our dual language and general education classrooms would have 15.9 or fewer kids. So we could likely social distance if that scenario becomes a reality. Then if you go to 60% of the kids returning, we're going to have 16 or more kids in 13 classrooms, and then 84 in 15.9 or less. And as you go to the right, I think the most likely scenario is around 70%. It's a pretty even split. So we'd be looking at 44 classrooms at the elementary level at 16 or more students, and then 53 below that number. Now, one of the things that we've done is we've looked at every available space in every school, and we know that we're going to need to use non-traditional spaces so that if we have a larger class, say 20, 21 kids, we're going to put those classes in non-traditional spaces like cafeteria, a gym. We have some large art rooms, libraries. We're going to use our available space because, you know, our first interest is getting kids back to school, and our second interest is ensuring, you know, that we maintain a safe environment to the greatest extent possible. So we will be moving some classrooms around so that we can maintain social distance to the greatest extent possible. Next slide, please. So in this slide, this is your typical setup for a primary grade classroom. A number of years ago, we started moving away from desks to create a physical environment with the furniture where children, where the physical environment would better facilitate collaboration between and among children. Well, now we have tables, and as you can see, it's very difficult to maintain social distance with 4 children sitting at a table. We can move the tables apart, but at the table, you're going to have 3 to 4 feet between children. To create a safer environment, we are purchasing plexiglass dividers for the tables that will sit on each piece of furniture, including the kidney table to the far left for the teacher as they work with small groups. In terms of Gemini, you know, we, like the primary grade classrooms, we just moved to flexible seating and a number of flexible spaces. And there'll be some challenges there with social distancing, and we know that. But they do have some flexible spaces that they can use to social distance. But at Gemini, we also know that the classes tend to be a little larger, and social distancing will be more of a challenge for many reasons, including, you know, kids in the middle grades tend to be more social, and we have many more kids in the school. So just in terms of transitions and the number of children in a classroom, it is different in the elementary. Next slide, please. Here you can see what a traditional classroom might look like at the elementary level with desks and rows. You actually rarely see this type of setup in elementary classrooms anymore. This setup is almost non-existent. But this is what it would look like if we had 20 children in a room. You can see that front to back, we can maintain about 6 feet between kids, but side to side it's less. It's about 4 feet. But one thing to note here is that this scenario doesn't allow for walking lanes and, the children to have movement space while maintaining 6 feet. If you think about a child, if they have a foot or two just to move around at their desk, then you would have to expand the distance between, one child and another child. Okay, Aaron.
All right, this slide just shows you what Dr. Schleiser just talked to you about. There are some traditional spaces that we can use that we will convert to classrooms if needed. And then there's a list of those non-traditional spaces that we can move into if absolutely necessary. Of course, the ability to do that is also dependent on the staff that's available to teach those classes. Okay, Aaron. Ms. Chico.
So I just did want to talk a little bit about our experiences so far in bringing students back in our self-contained hybrid model. We've been providing in-person instruction now for about 4 weeks, and staff and students have been working really hard to establish routines and follow the new practices and procedures in their buildings. We have been able to maintain a social distance expectation of about 6 feet to the greatest extent possible, and that has been especially important because we do have some students that have returned unable to wear masks for medical or developmental reasons. So for many of the students, we have started kind of building that tolerance for wearing face coverings in the building. And with 2 to 4 students in a classroom to start, we've been pretty successful in maintaining space for students. The lower class numbers have also allowed our teachers to do some creative things with schedules. So we haven't necessarily had to change teachers at this point because we've had schedules that have allowed teachers to teach both their in-person students and remote students either simultaneously or using teaching assistants and related service providers to provide that additional support in the classroom and free up teachers to teach remotely. As we look ahead to our full return to hybrid instruction for all of our students with special needs, we will have to look more carefully at the students' IEPs and 504 plans. Nearly all of the IEPs will need to be updated to make sure that our bell-to-bell and instructional minutes are reflected accurately in their IEPs, as well as look at baseline data to determine if any additional supports or services are needed to ensure that students are meeting their goals. Special education staff are also going to have to look at how we provide our small group instruction, looking at a wide continuum of options to provide that support, even maybe considering pull-out models versus push-in models if that is what is needed to provide instruction safely for students. Specific to our self-contained classrooms, we are going to have to make sure that we are maintaining that social distancing as much as possible, but we are going to be having more students in the room, so that will reduce some of that space that we have available to us. But again, to the greatest extent possible, we will observe that 6 feet of social distancing space. We're also going to continue to work with our students on building that tolerance for wearing face coverings, as we still have some students who aren't quite there yet, but are making progress towards making it throughout their instructional day with face coverings. Additional PPE will remain available to staff working in those rooms to provide additional safety for staff working with students without masks on. For the students that decide to remain in 63 online, we will continue to provide academic and functional support as listed in their individualized remote learning plans for both our self-contained and resource students, whether participating in hybrid or remote. There is a possibility that some students may experience changes in their case managers or related service providers, depending on where numbers fall in different buildings and how we can best provide support. Despite these changes, though, we can remain committed to ensuring that all of the needs of students are met as listed in their individualized education plans and individualized remote learning plans.
Okay. First, I wanted to talk about English language student caseloads. So ELL resource teachers will continue to provide direct services to English learners as deemed appropriate based on their current English language proficiency levels in the hybrid setting. And while all efforts will be made to maintain the 63 online caseloads and schedules, some students may experience changes with their EL resource teachers, like we've already discussed. Students remaining in 63 online will, however, continue to receive English learning resource supports. In terms of services, resource teachers will plan with their assigned grade level teams to ensure that instruction, assessment, and all assignments are appropriately scaffolded and differentiated to meet the needs of language learners at all the different language proficiency levels. So in addition to, supporting newcomers and making sure that those students' needs are met, they will be meeting with those students at in the hybrid, and also if those students decide not to come back, we will continue to provide those services online as we have been. If students need additional ELL resource support outside of the morning hybrid schedule, we may be able to meet with students in the afternoon via Google Meets to provide some live support with any asynchronous assignments or providing any additional language learning opportunities. And as Ms. Pacheco mentioned previously, resource teachers will utilize a combination within the hybrid setting of co-teaching, small group, one-on-one instruction to provide language development and instructional supports. We are looking at different ways to provide push-in services and or pull-out services, but also making sure that everyone is doing so safely and following any and all safety protocols that we put into place in the buildings. Now I'm just going to shift to talk about dual language programming. Our hybrid plan outlines what all K through 5th grade general education teachers will need to know and be able to do in order to successfully implement the hybrid plan. And so dual language teachers will follow the same guidelines. However, we do want to point out that as you all know, we do not know what the hybrid student enrollment will look like at this time. But we, like I said, wanted to point out that we may have to shift one of our dual language buildings, either Apollo or Nelson, to provide hybrid in-person dual language classrooms, while also providing a 63 online dual language set of classes. So that we're sure that we are providing supports for students who elect to be either in person or continue to learn in the remote setting. But careful consideration will be used to determine the best instructional scenario for all of these students enrolled in the dual language program. And so we just wanted to point that out today, that is something that we may have to consider when we do receive the information from families, depending on whether they want it to be in learning or in-person learning or remote setting.
All right, so I just wanted to, we've heard a lot about the plan for 63 hybrid. I wanted to provide a quick synopsis of some of the differences and similarities that students, families, and teachers will experience with our 63 hybrid proposal as compared to what they're currently doing through 63 online, and even in comparison to the goal, which is our typical instructional approach for school. So in terms of the schedule for both 63 online and 63 hybrid, I said this before, it will be largely the same for the majority of students. It's really the location of learning that changes for most. Typical school, of course, had students in there for the entire day. So that's the major difference there. In terms of standards, so the learning standards that guide teaching and learning will continue to be our basis for instruction, no matter what model we have here. We have and we will continue to adjust our instructional practices to facilitate grade level expectations. Standards-based grading and assessments continue to be our policy for grading and providing feedback. That's happening now through 63 online and will continue through our hybrid approach. You will see, however, that for 63 online and 63 hybrid, I added the with challenges, quote unquote, description. Teachers are definitely working hard to assess the way we normally would, but all of this brings many challenges that staff continue to collaborate and work through with our online program. We also know in a remote environment, it's going to bring its own set of challenges. In terms of learning, 3 evidence-based practices for student learning that typically guide our approaches are collaboration with teachers and students among students, engagement, and teacher responsiveness to student learning needs. Engagement and responsiveness will definitely continue, but I think collaboration here will pose its biggest challenge. I think it's important to realize that many students and teachers will be in person in the future for our hybrid instruction, but it will look very different than typical in-person instruction. Social distancing, masks, separated learning spaces, the inability to share materials, etc., present a lot of challenges in terms of collaboration and learning between students. So it's important that we just keep that in the back of our minds. Will we do all that we can to make it worse? Of course, the staff has done so much already to make these good experiences for students. Is it going to be a challenge? It definitely will. And I think the last piece I just wanted to bring to the forefront is that socialization piece with school. Perhaps one of the most exciting things about going to school is the chance to see your friends and spend time with them. Something important to think about is that there will not be in-person recess or lunch with our proposal here. And social distancing will definitely bring an atypical school experience for students through our hybrid approach. Our goal definitely is to get back to typical school instruction as soon as we can. It's just also important to know that there will be some challenges with bringing students in person and trying to facilitate some of those experiences that we're used to with typical instruction. One thing I did want to kind of detour for just a second and talk about attendance for 63 online. I know that was a topic that we talked a lot about at the last board meeting, and I just wanted to bring you all some updated information. First thing, we made a change. This began on September 14th following our board meeting to our attendance procedures. We had teachers start to take attendance. While our original intention was to have parents submit attendance so as to allow some flexibility for work completion at home due to various family circumstances, we unfortunately were not getting accurate data. In the first week of 63 online attendance data that I shared with you at the September Board of Education meeting reflected just that. We weren't sure how accurate that information was. So if you look at the green column, you'll see averages for each grade level. This represents teacher and entered attendance data beginning September 14th. It shows that overall our district average has been 97% attendance for 63 online. So this shows that, number one, almost all of our students are attending some or all of 63 online. And number two, our shift in attendance procedures has definitely yielded more accurate information in this situation. Keith.
Good evening. First, I want to talk about student Chromebooks. As we shift back, grades 3 through 8 will need to transport their devices to and from school daily. They were issued an always-on case facilitate transportation and keep the devices safe. Grades K and 2 will still need to work asynchronously at home in the afternoons, so they will need to leave their devices home. We did not buy cases for them. Their intent was never to be taken back and forth. We are concerned with damage and the extra weight and burden it would be on students to transport them. We will have some limited devices available in schools. I'll be meeting with the principals tomorrow, and we're going to talk about how we can make sure they're clean between uses, as they will be shared labs. We're also taking a look at projection and streaming. Video and audio projection in non-instructional spaces is being evaluated. And if streaming from classrooms is needed, we're looking at what additional equipment is required. We've procured several different setups, and we're in the process of testing them. I have noted some concerns related to that, and the same with teacher voice amplification. If teachers are coming back and they're required to keep distance from students and wear masks, there is some concern about how well they'll be able to be heard from the students. So we're investigating teacher voice amplification systems. We think it would be very viable at the elementary schools because there's one teacher in a classroom and they wouldn't have to share the mic. At Gemini, if the students are the ones staying in the classroom and the teachers are moving, there is some concern with a teacher sharing a mic. And then we're also in the process of upgrading our internet right now from 1 gigabit to 4 gigabits, and we hope that's in place within the next few weeks. Thank you. Ange?
Good evening. So this just sort of breaks down the transition and the hybrid model that expanded learning would then continue to provide services for students who require childcare beyond the 11:55 end of the hybrid school day. So currently we are operating the expanded learning childcare with 63 online support program, and between 7:30 is when the doors open and drop off begins. The school day is from 8:15 to 2:25 for elementary, and then varies for Gemini. And then after school, the Beyond 63 online program is from 2:25 until 6 p.m. As we transition, we will continue to offer the full daycare program for the students currently in it until their grade level transitions to hybrid learning. And then they will only have the afternoon option as an option. Then we'll also be running the afternoon care program for those who are already transitioned into in-person in the morning. We will continue to run the after-school programs as they are now. And then we are planning on offering a Excel Academy with 63 online to support those families who do opt into remote learning, but require full day care still. Though it will be a very small, limited program with small cohorts of students. And then once the transition is complete, we will no longer be offering the no-cost full-day childcare option. We will, however, be offering the afternoon care and the after-school, and then the paid full-day care option for those parents who opt into that program. Dan?
Yes, good evening. Sorry, I get myself off of mute. Commercial sprayers are being used in each building, and all surfaces will be sanitized each evening after school ends. And I give you the whole list. It's basically every single surface in the classroom and hallways. Bathrooms will be sanitized throughout the day. The head custodians and principals will have to make a bathroom schedule so that head custodians can go in and wipe fixtures down in between class use. Each classroom is going to be issued a refillable dispenser containing 900 disinfecting wipes to be used in their classroom throughout the day as needed. Floors will be mopped and vacuumed daily as usual. These are the procedures that were set by the Centers for Disease Control, and we're currently using these protocols at the FRC and in our self-contained rooms, and it is working well. Any questions?
All right, board members, now it's time for whatever questions you have, discussion, recommendations. Keep in mind, as you know from your screen, that our principals and assistant principals are here to answer any questions that you might have for them.
Well, I'll start. You had mentioned the plexiglass shields that were being bought. Would those be available for every single classroom then throughout the district, or how is that going to work?
We will have them in every classroom that has tables where they need them. So some classrooms will still have desks because they never got rid of them. But wherever there's a table that we'll have children at, we'll have the plexiglass.
So I've got a couple of thoughts. First of all, I want to say I think this is a really, really well laid out plan. I really do feel there was a ton of work put into it, and it shows, because I can't poke a lot of holes in it. So that's a good thing. I do have two thoughts. I could poke a couple of holes. I don't love the fact that we may have to switch remote and in-person learners with different teachers, but there's been so much work put into that that's probably not worth really revisiting from my end. The only thing I might challenge us on and see what the other board members think is, I really do feel we're taking a very long time to get everybody back into classrooms. There's a reason for that, I understand, but can we move it by a week or two? If the self-contained classrooms are going 2 days a week, why do we need to wait 3 weeks to get them to go 5 days? Can we push it a week or two just so that kids do have a chance to be in the classroom? Because who knows what winter and later will bring, hopefully better things, but we don't know what we don't know. The other thought I had, although the difference is only 4 or 5 days, no matter how we decide to do this, grade 8, those are kids that are spending their last year at Gemini. Just like I know Maine East is trying to do with seniors, is to give them at least as much time as possible in the building. Maybe there's a way to flip that a little bit so 7th grade goes after 8th. I'm not sure. We're probably arguing over 4 or 5 days. So again, it's not enough to make or break this, but just something to think about.
Well, first of all, I can talk a little bit about the self-contained, and I'll let Ms. Pacheco talk more. But even if we move that forward, it wouldn't help us with the other grade levels, because it's the 3 weeks for sure that we need for our kindergarten. They're the first group to come back in. We've got to get all this other work done, all these things in place before kindergarten can come in. So we may be able to move them earlier, but it doesn't really help us speed up the whole line of grades coming in. Jen, you want to speak to that?
Can I just add one question? When you say all the work that has to be done, you're talking about the plexiglass dividers and that type of stuff?
No, I'm talking about figuring out who the kids are, staffing, figuring out if we have to open up new classrooms to get class sizes down, all those kinds of things.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, and just to add to what Dr. Clay said, we are offering this opportunity as an additional opt-in point, because as you'll recall, while we had many students come back for our self-contained in-person instruction, not everyone did. The numbers look a little different than they did at that point, so we did want to give parents that opportunity to opt in again. With scheduling busing and all the things that come with that, we're looking at maybe a difference of 2-3 days at the most if we sped it up.
Okay.
And then I think maybe some principles, it would be good for you to talk about why you feel it's important to stagger the grade levels in. We haven't talked a whole lot about that, so I know you have perspective on this.
I can speak to that. I think there's just going to be a huge emphasis as we phase kids back into the building on procedures and safety procedures. And I think just moving a large volume of people in and out and around the building while maintaining social distance is daunting. And I think also making it a positive experience for our youngest learners when we come back and really giving them the attention and care that they need to get comfortable in the building with everyone wearing masks, knowing where they need to be, when to get on their buses to meet their adults. I also think going a little more slowly allows us to course correct if we feel like there is a procedure that's not going as smoothly as we would like. It's easier to address that when you have a smaller number of students to prepare, for another wave of kids coming in, versus having a large number of kids come in at once. So I think going slowly allows us to really get the details right and make it a positive experience for students as well.
Thanks, Lauren. That actually brings up one more question. I apologize, but I've got a lot of stuff spinning in my head. Busing. I believe on District 62's website, when I was reading their plan, they are planning not to offer busing to anybody unless they're at least a mile and a half from school or have a dangerous intersection, to limit the numbers on the buses. Obviously, you can't easily social distance on a bus. Is our plan to do anything like that? I know that wasn't covered unless I missed it.
Go ahead, Jordy.
Yeah, Walter, we most of our kids are either over a mile and a half, or they have to cross a dangerous crossing. The students that you're talking about that wouldn't be under those categories, we're talking about 10% of our bus riders, a couple hundred students. I don't think it makes much of a difference to not offer busing to those students. So no, we're going to offer busing to all of them.
Can we at least maybe potentially ask parents, if at all possible, if they can commit to driving their children? If they can, the buses are available. That would certainly help with social distancing. If we can get a few parents who maybe use buses out of convenience, but do have the ability to drive their child. I don't know how you ask that, but maybe it's, as we ask the question now, I think we need to ask if they're going to be using busing or not, right? If they are sending their child back.
So we actually are planning on, we're asking them, did you register for busing? And if so, are you planning to ride the bus based on under our 63 hybrid plan? And that will give us an idea of how many students are going to ride. I will tell you, Walter, that I've discussed with 62 and with First Student. First Student runs the buses for 62 as well. And I know it's only been one day. But as of right now, not even 50% of the students that normally ride the bus at 62 are riding the bus. And I suspect we're going to see a similar proportion here.
I would think so as well. Yeah, I agree. Okay, thank you.
Along those routes, Jordy, could you tell everyone who's listening what First Student has offered to do with regards to safety on the bus?
Yeah, so they've gone through some pretty extensive cleaning protocols. They are spraying the buses with a substance that actually stays on the surface and kills viruses for a total of 30 days, as opposed to spraying a surface and then somebody wipes it off and that substance goes away. That does not happen in this situation. Drivers will be required to wear masks whenever they are at school, loading or unloading students. While they are driving, they can wear one if they want, but for safety reasons, they won't. Students will be loaded on the buses. The first students getting on go in the back, and then they load going forward. Unloading will be the reverse. First students get off first until the last students on the last row. So there's quite a bit of extensive procedures they've implemented. They will also be creating seating charts for us. We can do them ourselves and send it to them, or they will do it for us, and to make sure that each student is sitting in the same spot so that we know, in the case we need to know, where each student is sitting and how close to other students. So there's quite a bit of safety procedures they've put in place.
And Sean here, one thing I failed to mention was that we do have concerns about staffing substitute teacher positions. And while we have polled all of our subs and have received replies on who intends to work, we're looking at, as of about 11 a.m. this morning, 43 substitutes who are willing to work between 1 and 5 days a week. So I am anticipating that it's going to be a challenge. As you all know, under regular circumstances, it's a challenge to staff teacher vacancies and teacher assistant vacancies on a day-to-day basis. And right now, I'm anticipating it to be especially challenging.
So then what's our plan, or we're just still trying to figure out the plan if need be, if there's substitutes that we need and we don't have substitutes available?
Well, like we've done in the past, we shift staff. If we have teacher assistants available who can substitute, we do move them. At times we have to have resource teachers and others who are not in a classroom with a group of kids take substitute positions. But I think the reality of the situation right now is anyone with a professional educator license could be subbing up to and including Dr. Clay.
Absolutely.
And we understand this. We've done it before. So, we'll do what we have to do. But, I'll start interviewing substitutes next week. And we're looking at some other options, but we anticipate it being a significant challenge.
All right, Alex, you had your hand up?
Yeah, so Angelica, question for you regarding capacity at FRC. What kind of numbers are we looking at in terms of being able to bring kids in?
Great question. That is really going to be determined by the number of students that return to school for in-person learning and how we staff it.
Okay. I would like to know, since we do have the benefit of our building leaders here, our principals and assistant principals, is there anything that you would like to add to this for our consideration and for those that are watching?
If I can speak, I'd like to start. Good evening. First of all, my colleagues and I and all the administrators, we will support whatever decision is made. I understand that having students at home is not easy for parents due to supervision issues and job constraints. This is what keeps me up at night and wakes me up during the night. We just hit 1 million cases of death cases worldwide. Data shows that 500,000 children have been diagnosed with COVID, and they can spread it as easily as adults. According to a CNN report today, a contact tracing study showed that children play a major role in the spread of COVID-19. 15% increase in the number of cases in the last 2 weeks in the United States. A member of the CDC just said that they are downplaying the risks associated with bringing kids back to school. On the plus side, online learning is working very well right now. We have over 95% of students participating daily. Our teachers are working so hard, often many hours beyond the typical day. They're enthusiastic and they plan engaging lessons. We have the latest technology from Google and the district that allows us to do many things. I even do breakout groups for kids to do small group instruction. I have numerous students, numerous teachers working in the buildings daily, and most of my administrators and all of my administrators and I are in the district. Making this change might have a negative impact on students who may not be with their teacher or may not be with their classmates that they're currently with. In-person learning will not look like it has throughout the years, what we're all used to. We're going into cold and flu season, which may increase the numbers and make it difficult to diagnose which is which. Also, beginning the in-person and online learning will slow maybe the progress that we've made with the current system. Every time you start something new, you always start it slowly. What is the opportunity cost of moving to the new model? What might we possibly lose and what might we gain? To me, you have to look at both to determine which is a better choice. Perhaps maybe look at returning K through 2 students to the classrooms for live instruction, because those are the ones that are more dependent on teachers and less independent at home. I have a responsibility to advocate, as you guys know, and you do too, for the health and safety of my students and staff. And so that's what I have to think about. Just know that whatever decision you make, we will support it. Thank you.
I too would.
Honest feedback.
I'd like to add something too, if I could. I want to thank you for allowing us to speak this evening. And I want to echo many of Howard's sentiments. Something that really must be noted right now is the tremendous high level of instruction that is happening online in our remote program right now. If you were to pop into any of our Google Meets during the day, you would see students who are going up to the virtual board, being able to share the pen and work on math problems together, interact in emotional check-ins and morning meetings. Our staff at every level has done a tremendous job. Our tech team, our custodians with now our in-person instruction, our classroom teachers. It's really just a tremendous feat. So I think that needs to be noted and recognized here in this meeting. As a building that did return to instruction in some capacity, we have been so happy to have our students in the building, to get to see students we haven't seen for so long. It's wonderful to be able to see these kids be able to socialize. That's much of what they need to do, have that in-person instruction, to receive their therapies with an adult who is certified to be able to do that. So that's been really tremendous. On the flip side, certainly we're very cautious. As Ms. Pacheco said, we have students who can't wear masks. We're adjusting to social distancing in that space. Certain intellectual disabilities make it hard to understand why we have to space in a way that we do. So with every positive, there does come some opposite or negative. That level of caution is hard for all of us to weigh. As educators, we want to be with our students. There's no question. I know you all know that. We want our children in school. I always talk to families and say, listen, when you're giving us your children, it's essentially like a parent giving you their heart for the day and saying, please take care of it, right? Please take care of it and give it back to me safe. And I think that's the challenge that I know we're all under right now. How do we do that safely? And as Mr. Sussman said, we will certainly, follow whatever it is that the board suggests. We recognize this is not an easy decision, but we struggle just as you are.
Mm-hmm. Well, certainly we want to be able to have as many perspectives and input because obviously it is important for us to be able to make an informed decision.
I just want to address, Walter, you had talked about the timeline a little bit, and I'm going to be just a bit selfish here and just talk from a middle school perspective. There is no way that Gemini can come back any earlier than what is on that proposed timeline. You're asking the 4 of us to do 3 months of work in 3 weeks. I know Sean had said as much as possible, schedules won't change, and that's at the elementary, we'll try to do that as much as possible. We are estimating, depending on the numbers, on the low end, about 50 to 60% of kids will have at least one schedule change of some point, a new teacher. Because unlike, just one teacher at the elementary schools, depending how many kids we have, most likely at each grade level, we're going to have an online team. So that means taking an entire team of teachers away. So it's a trickle down effect in that aspect. So it's going to be a bit of a larger impact. I'll be honest, again, as Howard and Cassie said, we're going to do what we need to do. I am concerned. Middle school students have an expectation of what middle school is, and that is not what middle school will be. They go in, they sit in a room, and they're in that room for 4.5 hours with the same people, and they're talking through plexiglass. They can't get up, they can't do their small group work, those types of things. So there is a concern with how they're going to react to that, and being in that room all day. I also get concerned, our students have the option, our families have the option, if hybrid learning, they don't feel safe or feel like they're getting the most out of it, that they can return to remote. So I do get a little nervous. The kids say, well, this, I can just do this at home. I can talk to my friends at home more than I can talk to them here. So mom, put me back in online learning. And how, if we have enough kids do that, then it's definitely going to mess up staffing. But again, we are going to do everything we can to keep the kids safe. As Sean said, distancing at Gemini is going to be a bit more of a difficult beast, just because of the different arrangements that we have. But, we will do our best.
Mr. Roberts, you bring up a really good point, and that is, I know that we've talked about the fact that parents will need to commit to online learning if they choose, but now we're looking at the potential opposite. Like you just said, they get to school and now they make a change and now they want to go back home. How are we going to deal with that?
It's a one-way commitment. They have to, if they're going to go remote, they have to stay remote until March.
Right.
But we don't feel like we can tell parents who start in person and then suddenly feel like it's not safe for their child that they have to stay. So we will let them go to remote.
Okay.
I will tell you
that staffing at some point if there's a large percentage, I assume.
Right.
The districts that have been open in private schools, the kids and parents I've talked to, they've had virtually nobody who's gone in, then say, I want to go remote. Almost everybody who's gone hybrid has stayed that way. Scott, I don't know if you've heard from anybody, but it does not look that the numbers switch very much. Now, if cases are spiking, but then we go all remote anyway. I mean, if, God forbid, it goes past that 8% or whatever. But as of right now, I've talked to quite a few parents. I work with a bunch of parents who are all over the place and have kids in school and have had for weeks. And I've been specifically asking the question because I was curious, and it's been very limited. I would expect us to see the same.
I have a quick question, or maybe it's a long question. But first, I wanted to say how much I appreciate how much work has been done in the past few weeks and months, and all of the work that will continue to go forward. I just can't even imagine what all went into making this plan and all of the day-to-day work that goes on for the learning of the students as well. My question is, and you'll forgive me if you did address this already, my brain's a little flooded with all the information, but I was wondering if you spoke to if a child has one sick day, an isolated sick day, they would stay in their same classroom. If they're quarantined, maybe their whole class isn't quarantined, but they are, what happens to their teacher? Do they stay within their same classroom? Are they moved out to a remote class for 2 weeks? How does that work?
Go ahead, Sean.
Aaron, do you want me to address it or do you want to address it? Aaron Roberson, you there? He's frozen. Uh-oh.
Sounds like he's giving you the floor, Sean.
So we're not intending to cast teachers from the classroom. So those children would have to join a remote classroom. And obviously that, the ability or I guess our curriculum pacing and where our teachers are instructionally, is one variable that we need to control because of the exact reason you pointed out. And this is one of many, as you know, many variables that we're considering and having to account for. But we are not intending to stream teachers in a classroom to kids outside of school for the hybrid.
And Katie, also, we may, if it's just an individual child or two, we may just treat it like any other longer absence where we send home the assignments and the child does them at home and that kind of thing, rather than switching a teacher.
Yeah, that's helpful and it makes sense. And then the child would just go directly back into their original classroom. Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Right.
Correct.
I have two questions. Could someone please discuss how we're going to handle students who regularly go to a nurse for medication or whatever chronic illness they have, and then students who get sick and basically almost any symptom you can think of is COVID? So how are we going to separate those two kids and those two groups of children? And then my second question has to do with the fact that we struggle sometimes with getting contact information for parents that's accurate. Any thoughts on how we can really work on that so we're going to be able to get a hold of our parents and not have these kids sitting around till the end of the school day?
Janet, I can address the COVID piece. The guidance from the Illinois Department of Public Health and ISB for schools is that we would follow our same protocols for typical illnesses. So if a nurse were to send a child home in the past, for typical symptoms, runny nose, et cetera, they would send them home now. However, obviously we're in a gray area because the nurse, as the school's healthcare professional, will have to make a determination on whether or not the child should see their doctor about a COVID test, and there should be follow-up. So it is a case-by-case basis. We know that we have kids who have things like allergies, and the guidance is that if you have new symptoms, that takes you in one direction on the following up with COVID, isolating, quarantining, and so on. But if they're not new symptoms, that takes you in a different direction. And obviously, this can be complex, and we know that it's going to require, it's going to create some challenges for us. When in doubt, we will send children home. That's what we've been doing to be as safe as possible. But we've had, I would say, remarkable responses from our parents, from the Family Resource Center, from the self-contained kids, with taking children to the doctor to get notes with alternative diagnoses so the kids can come back to school. And in cases where the doctor has said, no, we need the child to stay home, the parents have been, compliant and have followed through. I've been pleased with the response so far. But I know I didn't answer all your questions. I just addressed the COVID. What was the other part, Janet?
Part of it is, like my example, don't have kids in the school anymore, but I had a child with a chronic condition who needed to come to the nurse
Sure.
to get medication on a regular basis.
Yep.
And how are we going to separate the kids who are doing something like that, who are healthy, from someone who we suspect might have COVID or has some kind of symptoms that could be COVID related? Are we going to have separate areas for these kids?
Yes. We have isolation rooms at every school, so that if we have a suspected case, the child waits in the isolation room for their parent or an emergency contact to pick the child up. And in terms of medication or a child with a chronic condition, we do have a logistics committee that has worked on these sorts of things. And if we have anyone here who's addressed this, but I'm going from memory here, I think we're calling the nurse to the room to get the child to walk them to the nurse's office. But again, there's been a lot happening, and we should probably have someone from the logistics crew.
That is correct. The idea is to administer routine care outside of the classroom when possible. And it certainly could be administered in the health office as well, since we have the isolation room for children who we suspect or kids who may be, or staff who are exhibiting COVID symptoms would be in an entirely separate physical space.
All right. Thank you, Arn. I'm glad I remembered. So, all right.
Thank you.
Just to add to that, Janet, anytime the nurse is requested, the nurse goes to the student versus the student being taken to the nurse. So whether it's routine care or any kind of nurse needs, the nurse goes to the student to minimize the amount of students that are running through the hallways into the office.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
And I assume, if I understand the CDC guidance, since everybody's masked, that's actually probably safer than if you had the flu and everybody wasn't wearing masks around you. Can argue at that point, that's what I hear from the doctors, because I've asked that kind of a similar question.
Well, I know, Walter, that there is speculation that the flu season won't be as bad as in the past because assuming everyone is wearing masks.
Yeah. I've heard the same thing.
Certainly in our schools, we'll be wearing masks.
Yeah. I think no matter what, whether it's a cold or anything else, everybody's wearing masks. Technically, it should actually protect everybody against things other than COVID as well. If you're wearing it correctly, and if you're not touching your face, a couple of challenges, especially for younger children, I get that. But.
And then if someone can answer Janet's second question about getting updated parent information, because I know certainly that's a huge issue at my school as well.
We work on that all the time, and it is always an issue. Let's put that on the agenda for tomorrow morning's meeting, Aaron, and let's just kind of brainstorm with the principals what other things we could do to try to get that up to speed.
Speaking of that, what's our policy going to be if, we send out an email saying, hey, you need to choose in-person or hybrid by X date, and that X date passes, we maybe try calling the family, still nothing. Do we just automatically put them in an online class? At some point, we have to have a final.
Yeah.
I mean, with the original designation for which they're going to do.
Exactly.
But what we're communicating to parents is that a non-response is automatic remote learning. So if the deadline passes, we'll make some calls before the deadline gets there. But once it passes, then they're in remote learning.
Perfect. Thank you.
The other part of the plan, Walter, is, again, I'm working from memory here. We will be sending email, text reminders to parents starting Sunday if they have not made a selection. And Keith, could you confirm that?
Or Janet?
Janet?
Sure. Our plan is to send out a email in English and Spanish tomorrow morning, probably around 10 a.m. We probably have to do a little cleanup based on the results of the meeting tonight. We're also going to concurrently send a text, and this time we're going to use our phone system to send a phone message in English and Spanish. On Sunday, we send out our weekly e-learning update every week, and that's going to include another reminder right at the top, English and Spanish. And then, yes, on Monday, we will send reminders every day. We'll send reminders on Monday and Tuesday. We'll send texts and do whatever else we need to do. In addition, of course, we will be posting to social media and all of our other communications channels that we have available to us.
Just to add on to that, the follow-up messages that go to parents will only target parents who have not completed the survey.
That's true. Yes, correct.
And then Janet Kachkowski, sorry. I just want to say to answer your question too, Janet Spector Bishop actually does a really nice job with emails and making sure that those are constantly updated to the point where we just sent an email out over the weekend to our entire school population and got 7 bounce backs. So, 2,000 plus emails and only 7 bounce backs. So she does a really nice job at that.
Well, I've got a little help from the schools because the first key rule of communication is people have to receive it. So we work on that.
Any other comments, questions, statements? Board, is everyone on the same page for our district to move forward with this proposal?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes. And I just want to echo what Katie said. Thank you to everyone for all the time and effort and thought that has gone into this. It really is an undertaking, and know that we greatly, greatly appreciate it. And we know that you're going to do amazing things going forward. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I would also echo what Janet just said and Katie. The amount of work that's gone into this and the effort, especially when we really don't know, you're sort of planning for something. Is it going to happen? Is it not going to happen? And you guys have been working on this in this mode since July, So thank you very much for all your work and effort.
And I would just like to say in conclusion, before we move on to our next item, of course, thank you for everyone's input. The staff, the administrators, the community members, the parents, board members. And I do want to just say to our community, being our families and our teachers, please know that we understand that this is a very stressful and frightening time. And I just want to be able to assure you, as you can tell by the thoughtful plan and the thoughtful comments that our administrators and other staff have said, our number one priority is to make sure that your students and that you as staff are safe and healthy. And of course that the kids get the best possible education. So, please be rest assured that we are going to do everything possible to make sure that this is going to happen as smoothly as possible. So thank you all. Okay. Moving on. Could I please have a motion to enter into closed session to discuss the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Gluskin?
Yes.
Ms. Irvin?
Yes.
Mr. Simmons?
Yes.
Ms. Brooke?
Yes.
Ms. Kachkowski?
Yes.
Ms. Zeck?
Yes.
That motion passes, and we shall return. Are we all back?
Start this.
Okay. Could I please have a motion to adopt the following resolution acknowledging October 2nd, 2020 as Custodian Appreciation Day?
So moved.
Second.
Would anyone like to read this resolution?
I'll read it.
Thank you, Mr. Simmons.
And I think it's most fitting with COVID and all the work that the custodians are doing. It's so appropriate. Custodian Appreciation Day. Whereas school custodians are responsible for the first impression of a school to all who come through the doors. And whereas school custodians are often the first employees to arrive in the morning and the last employees to leave at night. And whereas our dedicated school custodians provide a critical service to the children and teachers daily by providing a clean, safe, and secure environment for teaching and learning. And whereas they keep all school system facilities running smoothly to the extent that without their excellent efforts, the school system could not easily function. And whereas they provide support for school and community use of school facilities outside of school hours, including recreational activities, and whereas they frequently go beyond the call of duty to assist students, teachers, and visitors to the school in numerous ways that reflect well on the school and the district. And whereas they exercise the above-mentioned responsibilities and functions with pride, skill, care, compassion, humor, and sensitivity. Now, therefore, it be resolved that the board expresses deep and heartfelt appreciation for the efforts made by custodial staff every school day. Be it further resolved that the Board of East Maine School District 63 declares that October 2nd, 2020 be recognized as Custodian Appreciation Day and urges all parents, students, and employees to join in congratulating all custodians for jobs well done and in saying thank you to them.
Yes, a huge thank you. We could not be able to do what our amazing teachers do without your assistance. So thank you very much. Roll call, please.
Mr. Boskin?
Yes.
Ms. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Simmons?
Yes.
Ms. Brooke?
Yes.
Ms. Ketchkowski?
Yes.
Ms. Sack?
Yes.
And Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
And that motion passes. And again, thank you. Could I please have a motion to adopt the following resolution acknowledging October 2020 as Principal Appreciation Month?
So moved.
Second.
And could we please get someone from the board to read this resolution?
I'll read it. Whereas school principals play an important role in the education and growth of children in elementary, middle, and secondary schools across the state of Illinois, and whereas school principals are responsible for promoting education and working with parents and teachers to ensure that each child receives services that meet their needs to excel in the classroom. And whereas it is the primary responsibility of the state of Illinois to preserve and improve resources for schools so that all students have the opportunity to receive a quality education and foundation for a successful future. And whereas principals believe that learning is a lifelong process and that the education of our children is the highest priority. And whereas principals are dedicated to advancing student learning through effective and innovative educational leadership development. And whereas educational leaders face many challenges in educating our young people, and it is through their perseverance and passion that East Maine School District 63 can continue to produce quality, career-ready students, and whereas we must continue to encourage, support, and recognize those who have a positive impact on our students. And now, therefore, be it resolved that October 2020 is hereby recognized as Principal Appreciation Month that honors the work and commitment of principals and assistant principals in schools throughout Illinois and acknowledges the leadership provided by these administrators.
A huge thank you. Yes. Roll call, please.
Ms. Urban,
Yes.
Mr. Simmons,
Yes.
Ms. Brooke,
Yes.
Ms. Ketchkowski,
Yes.
Ms. Zek,
Yes.
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
and Mr. Gluskin.
Yes.
And that motion passes, and you guys are amazing. Thank you. Okay. Could I please have a motion to adopt Resolution BR 05-2021, providing for the issue of not to exceed 3.3 million general obligation limited school bonds, Series 2020 of the district, for the purpose of increasing the working cash fund of the district, providing for the levy of a direct annual tax to pay the principal and interest on said bonds, and authorizing the sale of said bonds to the purchaser thereof.
So moved.
Was there a second? I'm sorry, I didn't hear. Did you
I
get
moved on it, and then we need a second. so-
Second.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mr. Camps?
Yes, just briefly, this is the last of the 3 steps we need to take to issue bonds. The resolution basically says that the board has decided to move forward and issue the bonds. We should be receiving 3.2 million on October 15th.
Okay. Board members, any questions? Okay, roll call, please.
Simmons,
Yes.
Ms. Brooke,
Yes.
Ms. Ketchkowski,
Yes.
Ms. Zek,
Yes.
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Gluskin,
Yes.
and Ms. Urban.
Yes.
And that motion passes. Okay. Could I please have a motion to accept the donations for our band and drama program at Gemini, donated by Kelly Sias of AbbVie?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? And that motion passes, and thank you for your donation. Could I please have a motion to approve the unpaid leave of absence request?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Ketchkowski,
Yes.
Ms. Zek,
Yes.
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Gluskin,
Yes.
Ms. Urban,
Yes.
Mr. Simmons,
Yes.
Ms. Brooke.
Yes, and that motion passes. Could I please have a motion to enter closed session for the purpose of discussing the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Zek,
Yes.
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Gluskin,
Yes.
Ms. Urban,
Yes.
Mr. Simmons,
Yes.
Ms. Brooke,
Yes.
and Ms. Ketchkowski.
Yes.
That motion passes. We do not anticipate returning. Therefore, our next business meeting of the Board of Education will be held on Thursday, November 5th, 2020 at 7 p.m. And thank you for joining us.